circuit in the St. Lawrence Seaway is one the driver's life, especially Ayrton Senna. First in 1988 and a commanding lead last year until his engine gave up. But although he's critical of this year's McLaren, he's in pole position again for the 30th time in 37 races. Gerhard Berger's yet to win for McLaren, but he's on the front row of the grid again. Happier that the car fits him better now, but looking ragged in practice in comparison with Senna's smoothness. But can world champion Alain Prost repeat his win in Brazil for Ferrari? To win, you have to finish, and he's only done that twice this year. But third on the grid, he's in the best place to attack the McLarens. The Montreal circuit is notorious for fickle weather. It was dry on Friday, but yesterday's driving rain meant it was Friday's times that decided the grid positions. And that certainly didn't suit Nigel Mansell, whose dry time possibilities were ruined by a puncture. With only 3 points so far, he desperately needs success in Canada. Happily, today's Canadian Grand Prix looks as though it could stay dry, but wet or dry, fuel consumption could be a problem, as Jonathan Palmer explains.
Formula One drivers and family motorists alike take for granted the vast amount of research and development that goes into improving the fuels they use. Grand Prix cars also run on petrol, a bit better than the old 5-star, and teams have the option of several different blends, some better for performance, others for economy, and unleaded can also be used. It's where to put this fuel that provides a major headache for the chassis designers. A tiny Formula One car must accommodate the full race requirement of 45 gallons, now that refuelling stops are no longer permitted, whereas a family car needs only to carry a quarter of this. Safety is of paramount importance. The tank itself is made of 5 layers of rubber and Kevlar and is situated right in the centre of the car, between the driver and the engine bay, with the old side extensions that used to wrap around the driver now banned following Berger's fiery accident at Imola last year. Like the family motorist, the Formula One driver also has a fuel gauge, but one so accurate he can tell his consumption a mere 4.5 miles per gallon to the last cc, and if it's too high, he can adjust the mixture setting of his engine. Normally though, it's the boffins in the pits, surrounded by computers, who monitor fuel consumption and signal any changes required to the driver. High fuel consumption only hurts the pocket of the family motorist. To the Formula One driver, it can mean running out of fuel and perhaps losing the World Championship.
The weather poses the biggest question mark over today's Canadian Grand Prix. A rain shower has just swept across the Ile Notre Dame track. Hello and welcome to Eurosport's flag-to-flag coverage of Round 5 of the World Championship. I'm Andrew Marriott, my co-commentator, a man who finished second here in 1981. It's John Watson. John, tyre choice vital today.
Yes, it is. One part of the circuit is very wet indeed, the other back part of the circuit dry. Most teams are on wet tyres. If the teams declare a wet race, they'll all be in wets.
Well, John, let's have a look at the championship positions. It's Senna at the top with 22 points. Second, Berger with 16. A lazy third with 13. Prost is fourth with 12 points. Both Patrese and Boutsen for Williams have 9. Seventh is Nelson Piquet with 6. Nannini is 8th on 4. Nigel Mansell only has 3 points to date. Modena and Caffey have 2, while Nakajima and Bernard have 1 point each. In the constructors, well, McLaren-Honda clear leaders with 38 points, more than double their closest rival, Williams-Renault with 18. Ferrari third with 15, just a point more than Ferrari. Benetton-Ford have 10. Brabham and Arrows have 2, and Lola, they only have 1 point. Lotus and others still to score. As ever, 26 drivers starting today, 9 more sitting it out, having failed to qualify. One man who didn't make it for only the second time in his career, Brazil's Mauricio Gugelmin. Matt Lorenzo caught up with him and asked him if the Leighton House car could be sorted in the future. Let's talk to Mauricio.
We know what our problems are. It's just basically to make new parts. The car takes a long time, and until we go back to the European races, I don't think we can do it.
So now you're forced to be a spectator for the Canadian Grand Prix. Do you plan to stay around for the race?
Yes, I want to have a look closely in the cars just to see what's our real problem, compare cars to other cars on the circle where I can really see what's the difference.
Who do you see coming out as the winner?
It's very difficult. I have to say that McLaren is the favorite, but on this type of circuits also Ferrari will do well.
Warm-up this morning saw the track wet from overnight rain, but drying during the 30-minute session. Fastest Gerhard Berger, second Boutsen, then Senna, Prost, Piquet, Mansell, Alesi, Suzuki, and Nannini and Patrese. Wojtek a big surprise there. Well, John, let's look at those times again then. Gerhard Berger the fastest on 1 minute 35.571. Second, Boutsen with 1:37.268. Senna third with 1:37.394. Then Prost 1:37.595. Fifth was Piquet 1:37.631. Then it's Mansell, Alesi, Suzuki, and very impressive, Wojtek was 11th fastest ahead of Pirro. You can't see that on your caption, but that is the news from here. John, the conditions here very difficult indeed. As you said, in some parts of the track it is dry, but most of it's wet. Everyone, as we look out of the commentary box here opposite the pits, seems to have the chunky wet weather tyres on.
Yes, the conditions around 3/4 of the circuit are very wet indeed, and in fact that's a problem because there's so much mist from the tyres, the water going up in the air, it's lingering, it's not disappearing.
Well, the race just minutes away. A good time to take a break. We'll be back with engines revving.
Diretta il Gran Premio del Canada, 22esima edizione, quinta prova del campionato del mondo 1990. È l'11ª volta che si corre su questo circuito di Montreal, ricavato sull'isola di Notre Dame, sul fiume San Lorenzo. Una corsa che purtroppo si presenta sfavorevole per quel che riguarda i tempi, che il campionato del mondo di automobilismo si è ritagliato nel grande avvenimento dei campionati del mondo di calcio, e perché è piovuto poco fa, la pista è bagnata. Io darei subito la linea a Zermiani per sapere i piloti cosa stanno decidendo di fare a proposito dei pneumatici. Partono col pioggia o col asciutto?
Ecco, questo è proprio il problema chiave di questa gara, come è stato poi, se ti ricorderai, anche lo scorso anno. Poco prima dello schieramento è piovuto e parecchio, quindi tutti hanno montato le cosiddette gomme rain, gomme da pioggia. Cos'è successo? Adesso si sta aprendo, addirittura un timido sole sta facendo capolino, ci sono degli sprazzi di sereno, anche se dalla parte est c'è parecchio nuvolaglia pesante. Quindi il problema è proprio questo, sapere che cosa fare, se partire e rischiare, partire con le slick in modo da avere poi con pista bagnata.
There's a bird's eye view of a very watery Ile Notre Dame circuit here in Montreal. Just see the grid rolling through. Row 8, Gerhard and Martini. The front row of the grid, of course, had Senna and Berger, then it's Prost and Nannini, Piquet and Boutsen, Mansell and Alesi, Patrese and Modena, Warwick and Donnelly, Nakajima and Alboreto going much better. Gerhard and Martini. The grid roller actually showing us the back of the grid. Wojtek and Leto there. Talked to JJ yesterday. Row 12, Eric Bernard and Ivan Capelli. Capelli in with the Leighton House. Monsieur Gougeman, as you just saw, not in the race. And the back row, De Cesaris and Caffey, former teammates at Dallara. Caffey now, of course, driving for Arrows and getting some very valuable points in Monte Carlo 2 weeks ago. Well, John, you're just looking out on the track now. It has stopped raining about half an hour before the start. Rain came over, but meanwhile we're having a look in car with Jerry Boutsen there. Perhaps you'd like to give us some gear change points.
Right, we're second gear. This is the section just after the start-finish line. Very, very slippery indeed. Back into fourth gear now. Come up to the next of a series of right-left S's into third gear. Really, the circuit is there's such a low level of grip, even in the dry. In wet conditions, it's even more difficult. So, searching out what dry line there is very important indeed. Boutsen sliding up the inside. You saw the lens getting cleaned. Now we can see where we're going, as well as what Boutsen's doing in the cockpit. Fourth gear, fifth gear, having a little wipe of his own visor, staying in fifth gear, then braking back to third gear. Again, you can just see the beginnings of this dry line. This was from the morning's warm-up. Set everything now down. This is the part of the circuit where you're going to see most overtaking action. It's the very tight second gear hairpin bend. This corner is placed just before the old pits. The circuit has been revised. Last year we had a new pits complex, which is much further down the circuit. This is where the old pits complex used to be on the left-hand side. That's the old control tower. And now we're about to go into this very exciting part of the circuit, the right, left, right flick, flat out. Even in damp, wet conditions like this, Boutsen probably is almost flat out through there. Down to fifth gear. And this is what takes him onto the start-finish line. Again, very, very quick indeed. But the downforce these cars have, even in wet weather conditions, it's amazing they can lap as quickly as they're doing.
Well, now we're back on the grid. That's recorded earlier, and there's Jerry Boutsen. There's, well, half of Ayrton Senna. John, you were talking to Ayrton yesterday about this new crash helmet. Quite an interesting story there.
Well, Ron Dennis of McLaren-Honda have combined and formed a company which is going to produce a helmet for the drivers which is lighter and they hope stronger.
Well, this is Ayrton Senna on Friday, setting his pole position time. The one day when the racetrack was dry throughout. And Senna, that record just gets bigger and bigger. Senna now has set the fastest lap, pole position, in 9 of the last 10 Grand Prix.
Well, there's no stopping him really. And in fact, his pole position time set on Friday, we were hoping we would see that being eclipsed on the Saturday, but unfortunately rain interfered with that. So the prospect of seeing an even more impressive and exciting performance from Senna, we were denied. And we have just to enjoy this one lap he did on Friday afternoon. For pole position at 1 minute 20.399.
But John, less than a tenth of a second slower Gerhard Berger.
Yes, and Berger's, I think the general situation for Gerhard Berger, he's feeling more comfortable in the team, not necessarily in the car. The car is still a big problem for him. He's really now happy just to grin and bear it, and I don't think we're going to see the team being able to do very much more for him until actually a new car is produced, a new chassis, totally new design.
So Senna on pole position alongside him, that man in the blue helmet with the Austrian flag on its side, Gerhard Berger. The second row of the grid, of course, Prost and Nannini. And there we take a look at Gerhard's flying lap, the one that was so close to Senna. Big battle for pole position actually on Friday. Senna fastest in the early stages. Berger went out, improved on Senna's time, and then Senna, with it looked like consummate ease, popped up a really quick one to pit Gerhard for the old pole spot there.
Well, it's not really a big surprise to see these two red and white machines on the front row. That's their normal starting position. But what I think was interesting and an indication to the future was the performance of Nannini and Piquet in their Benetton-Fords. They are on 4th and 5th place, and that's a very good position. And remember, they have a V8 Ford engine, which is not meant to be as powerful as the V10 Honda, V10 Renault and the V12 Ferrari engines. Yet that performance was done with the aid of quite a lot of horsepower.
But that V8 engine very small, and the car is probably down on the weight limit. And John Barnard with the team this weekend, exercising some influence on the way the operation is run, I believe. Well, that's a nice view. That's a new beach. You just see the yellow line. That beach has been built in the last 2 or 3 weeks. There is Senna, there is Berger. Engines just fired up. John just craning out of the commentary box to see if anyone is brave enough to go on slicks. We suspect that people will be making pit stops to change onto the dry tyres as the water is soaked off the circuit, literally sponged off the circuit. These big tyres do clear it very well, John, and definitely no rain at the moment.
Well, the rain has stopped, but this part of the circuit and the majority of the circuit, in fact, is still very wet. Some of the tyre companies, Pirelli, they have got regular slick tyres with grooves in them in case the conditions demand a half and half sort of tyre. Goodyear, the other tyre company, it is not their policy to groove their slick racing tyres, so they will only have the choice of pure wet tyres or pure dry tyres. So it's going to be a very interesting, and it could be a very tactical race also. It's these conditions are really putting it in the hands of a lottery.
Yes, these cars just rushing round on their final warm-up lap. Let's just reiterate the grid again for you. Senna and Berger on row 1, Prost and Nannini row 2, row 3 is Piquet and Boutsen, row 4 Mansell and Alesi, row 5 Patrese and Modena. On row 6 it's Warwick and Donnelly, the two Lotuses together, row 7 Nakajima and Alboreto, row 8 Griard and Martini, row 9 Alio and Suzuki, row 10 Pirro and Laurini, row 11 Wojtek and Leto, row 12 Bernard and Capelli, and on the back row De Cesaris and Cafe.
And we just look how bad the spray is. Now these cars are not running at racing speeds yet, they're just on a parade lap. That's going to be a lot worse on the opening laps, and visibility for the people who are behind basically the front row of the grid is going to be atrocious. So it's a time for prudence, particularly for the midfield runners. They're the people that are always in that danger zone. So I think the people sort of Derek, Warwick, Nakajima, Griard, Modena, Donnelly and Alboreto, that middle of the grid is going to be a very tense early couple of laps, I would say.
Well, that graphic showing us that there's a total outbreak of TV cameras here. The Canadians putting up 16 or 17 cameras. Certainly been giving us some good pictures in qualifying. And as you see, a very big and enthusiastic crowd of Canadian fans here. Of course, we must never forget that great Canadian Gilles Villeneuve. The circuit now named after him. The driver you raced against, John, an exciting driver. And the only Canadian ever to score any points in the World Championship. Had about 12 Canadians in the World Championship over the years, but Gilles, the only man that's really been a top driver. John Lacey certainly weaving around there to get some temperature up. Now we go in car with Stefano Modena. 3 in-car cameras this weekend. 2 Williams and Stefano Modena. Just to remind you that David Brabham failed to make it, sadly. Had all kinds of gearbox problems on the first day, and then the track just didn't dry up quickly enough on day 2 to let him have a big go at getting in the race. I suspect he might have done had that opportunity been available. Seconds away now from the start. That all McLaren front row of the grid, a familiar scene. Alain Prost in 3rd position, has not won this race. One of the few Grand Prix that Alain Prost has failed to win. Two superb Honda engines at the back of those McLarens, revved to 13,000. How many revs will they be hanging on for the start?
Not too many, because in these wet conditions you won't need anything like that. I would have thought somewhere around 8,000-9,000 RPM will be enough to get the wheels spinning, and then really balancing the wheels.
Niet allemaal stil.
Throttle, trying not to get excessive wheel spin, and here's the red light on now. Oh, and Berger
was
moved
creepy.
away.
Well, we don't know if he's going to get a penalty for that. Senna it is into the lead though. Berger second. Alesi charging hard as ever in the early stages. Nannini, I think it was, in 4th spot. Got a traffic jam at the back there. Berger twitches. Very difficult, tricky conditions here in Montreal.
And we got Pierluigi Martini's been punted off in that first section of circuit. But Senna leading now, Berger second, Nannini third, and Alesi, who really stormed his way through. He's rather like a bully at the start of a race. He just elbows his way up front, and he's got into fourth place.
Just saw Boutsen there trying to make up a spot and very nearly making contact. Plumes of spray behind these cars. Under the bridge and sharp right. None of the corners have names here at Montreal.
You just see how atrocious it is coming into that corner. It's almost impossible to see one car behind the other. But as long as the rain stays away, it's going to clear up, I think, probably quite quickly. And with only cars running, a dry line is going to appear, I hope, within about 5 laps, and then we're going to see the dive into the pits. Who's going to be first and who's going to take the risk and run on slick tyres.
As you said, John, it's all about strategy, this race. Senna, a master tactician. There's Alesi under the bridge. The Brazilian flag waved to encourage Senna as if he needed any. Fastest part of the circuit alongside the Olympic rowing basin. That flick right and left. Marshall's, oh now what's that Marshall doing?
Well, we've still got Martini's Minardi stopped in a very precarious part of the track, and one of the problems here is there are no cranes to hoist that car out of the way. So what the pit crews do, the team, the workers here, they've got to take out a truck out of a tow hook, attach it to the car and pull it out of the way. But of course in these conditions it's not comfortable for the drivers to have one of those trucks on the track, so they're prepared, I would say, to leave the car there, give them plenty of warning that it is there, and then when the conditions clear up they'll get the crew workers in and get that car out of the way.
The mastery of Ayrton Senna. At the end of the first lap he was 1.8 seconds ahead of Gerhard Berger, Nannini third, Alesi, Piquet, Prost, Boutsen, Mansell. Then Patrese, Warwick in 10th place, Modena 11th, Donnelly 12th, then it's Grillard, Pirro, Alboreto, Nakajima, Alio, Foytek and Suzuki. That is the top 19 positions. Switching around. There's last year's winner, Gerry Boutsen. McLaren's first and second. Nannini hanging in there third, then Alesi.
These first 4 cars really are being able to stretch the lead, and the rest of the field, they've got a clear road ahead of them. There's sufficient gap between the cars that the spray isn't interfering with them, so they're taking full advantage of that opportunity. Berger running about 1.5 seconds behind teammate Senna. Still that yellow flag. The car, they managed to pull the front of the car now off the racetrack, but
still you see from that overhead shot frantic flag waving.
I was saying in the distance there's an oil flag being waved. Somebody must have dropped oil or something on the track that has caused that flag marshal to put out a yellow and red flag, so maybe we're going to see some people coming into the pits at this stage already.
There's Nigel Mansell, not having the happiest of seasons. Has the speed but not the reliability in the Ferrari. This is lap number 3. That is Ayrton Senna. There's Berger. Then it's Nannini. Then Alesi. Down the hairpin. Second gear or first in these conditions, John?
Well, I would say they would use second gear because you want to minimise the amount of wheel spin. Again, as a low-speed corner, you want to try and get out of the corner as progressively and gently as possible. Using first gear, there'll be too many revs, too much horsepower, make the back wheels lose adhesion, the car starts to slide. So second gear would be my choice, and everything that you do in the wet in these conditions has got to be done very, very delicately indeed to maintain the momentum and to minimise sliding around. So it's, here we have Modena now coming through this very fast section of circuit. And there's Brabham.
That car still running with the longitudinal gearbox. Apparently still some financing problems. To make sure that they get the gearbox done, they need to do a little bit more work. So they're still looking for a sponsor at Brabham to help with that situation. interesting story in paper here in Montreal a couple of days ago that Modern is totally denying the fact that he's superstitious, and this situation with wearing a glove inside out that we talked about a year ago, apparently it's just because the glove was uncomfortable the right way in. So he says he isn't superstitious, but there is Ayrton Senna.
I have to say, I find it hard to believe that he wore his glove like that for the entire season. I can't believe he couldn't afford to buy another pair of gloves that were more comfortable. And I think some other people that have worked with him would confirm his superstitions are a little bit more than he's admitting to. But if it makes him comfortable, if that's what it takes to have Modern go quicker, well then let him have superstitions.
Right, just looking at the end of lap 3 on the Longines monitor. Senna, Berger, Nannini, Alesi, Piquet and Prost. That is the top 6. Boutsen is 7th, last year's winner. Then it's Mansell 8th, Tracy 9th and Warwick in 10th spot. Sure, Alesi, we're used to the sparks coming off that front wing now, but John, you're telling me that may not be allowed next year.
The regulations are going to change, and with the Tyrrell in particular, these the front of the aerodynamic wings in the car, what causes it to spark are the end plates of the wing are touching the ground nearly all the time, and that is a big aerodynamic advantage. Next year, those wing end plates are not allowed to be, they must be 20-25 centimeters above the bottom of the chassis. In other words, they're going to be well clear of the ground, and that's going to create quite a different aerodynamic problem for the designers of teams to have to cope with.
The man to watch now, Boutsen has passed. Alain Prost is up to 6th place. There is Nelson Piquet, currently running in 5th spot. Will Piquet soon come under pressure from Boutsen? Currently the gap is 3.6 seconds. On the brakes down to the hairpin. Course car there, presumably that went out to see what was happening, and that is a dodgy old situation you don't see very often at Grand Prix races.
No, it's not, and I hope the drivers were fully briefed in the driver briefing this morning that if a course car goes out, what it is there to do, and what the driver is expected to do also, because normally when a course car goes out, it means all the drivers have to fall in line behind it and do a number of laps behind the pace car until it is brought in, and then the racing can resume. That, I have no idea what it's for at all.
Showing the gap as 1.6 seconds between Senna and Berger, and it looks closer than that to me on that screen.
Yes, the gap I would say is a little bit less than we're seeing on the screen. In fact, Nannini also is managing, I think, to close a little bit closer to Berger. I think with the track beginning to show signs of a dry line, it's enabling the drivers to attack a little bit more. They were being quite naturally cautious in the early laps, but now the beginnings of that dry line are appearing. Gives them the chance to use the power they have and the grip that these wet weather tyres are providing, and start to get a little bit closer to one another.
Senna, Berger, Nannini, Alesi, Piquet and Boutsen. This race is scheduled for 70 laps, 307 kilometres, 190 miles. Whether it will go that full distance remains to be seen. All depends on the weather. 2 hours, of course, the cutout off point. There's Nannini, seems to be doing something with his hand to the mirror. Now that gives a very good impression of how close the 3 are. Senna in the lead, Berger 2nd, Nannini in 3rd spot. Boutsen closed up a little bit more on Piquet.
And these 3 are really pulling away from Jean Alesi in 4th spot. We can see that Alesi cannot maintain the pace of the 2 McLarens and the Benetton. But that's not despite a mega effort on the part of Alesi. His enthusiasm and commitment is absolutely wonderful to watch. But here's the main bunch of the field now. And it's a shame we can't see more of this, because this is going to be the entertaining part of the motor race. No one wants to go off the dry line. Of course, it's you lose an awful lot of grip very, very quickly indeed. So you're seeing 10 or 12 cars. Alberetta having a little snip down the inside of Grillard.
It's still Senna leading by 4.6 seconds from Nannini and Alesi.
And this is wonderful stuff. It's just a shame he can't. Well, Berger's still there. I don't know. I think our Olivetti timing equipment has missed Berger because he's within a second of Ayrton Senna in the lead. So,
well, that is a very rare happening indeed. That computer makes a mistake. So apologies. It is still Senna, followed by Berger. John, I think I've got the answer to this. I think that Berger's been penalised a minute for jumping the start. That they would put into the computer.
It could well be. It could be that he was given a minute's penalty, and that's why our readout here isn't reflecting that penalty. All we know is that he's been dropped right down to the tail of the field. In fact, Berger's being classified as running in 24th.
You see that?
1 minute, yes, you're right. Well done.
That's what's happened. So Gerhard Berger penalised a minute for jumping the start. We await, of course, for official confirmation of that. Well, he did creep.
He did. I think he did more than creep. He was on the move well before red went to green, and the penalty for that is a 1 minute. So that's...
There is Sandro Nannini, third on the road, second overall. So Senna the leader, Nannini is second, Alesi third, Piquet fourth, Boutsen fifth, Prost sixth, and to remind you that Gerhard Berger has been docked 1 minute for jumping the start. So Gerhard will be pretty angry about that.
Yes, that's, well, I'm afraid to say if you jump the start you have to pay the penalty, and whether he had a mechanical problem, sometimes if you were holding the car in gear with the clutch in for a long time, the clutch gets very hot, and the car creeps forward and there's not much you can do about it. I'm quite certain that's what Gerhard would say would happen. Taking a chance like that, otherwise at the front of a grid, would really deserve a minute's penalty, so I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and say his clutch was dragging a little bit in the car. He couldn't stop it rolling forward.
Dry line starting to develop. A wonderful shot there of a man at work, Ayrton Senna. This Senna's 99th Grand Prix. There's Riccardo Patrese. Patrese currently in 8th spot. Boutsen in 5th position. Just a shot of Derek Warwick there. Completely different to the good years. Asymmetric is the word, I think, John.
Yes, it is. They've got two different tread patterns on the one tyre. One is to cut through very, very deep water, and the other is to cope with conditions such as these. So they've got a wet weather tyre, which in effect is a dual-purpose tyre.
Just recap the positions. Senna, Nannini, Alesi, Piquet, Boutsen, Prost, Mansell, Warwick, Donnelly, Modena. That's the top 10. Then it's Pirro, Alboreto. And what's this? We've got an Arrows off, yes, and we've got a Delara off.
We've got a Alboreto off for sure. We don't know which Delara it is. We have a suspicion that maybe De Cesaris.
Unfair.
It's a fairly reasonable guess, I think, but we have to wait and see. We maybe do him an
Senna
injustice.
Into the pits. Senna is going to go onto the slicks. And as he does so, Nannini will take the lead, only briefly. Good pit stop. Gets it sideways, almost wipes out a couple of mechanics.
That was a very, very good pit stop indeed.
So Sandro Nannini leads the Canadian Grand Prix here at Montreal. He is still on wet tyres. His teammate Nelson Piquet has come in, and they seem to be having a problem.
Yes, they're working around the right front suspension on Piquet's car, whether they're making a mechanical adjustment to the suspension at the same time, but obviously losing a lot of time in the process, and that's going to drop Piquet back down from his 4th position.
And Derek Warwick comes in. So everyone now deciding to go on to slicks. Warwick gets his visor wiped. A sea of yellow there with the Camel team. But it's Nannini in the lead. Alesi second, Boutsen third, Prost fourth, Senna in 5th spot. Then it's Mansell, Donnelly, Piquet, Warwick and Berger. And we're going to see the positions changing around over the next 10 or 15 laps, virtually every lap.
Well, I would imagine we're going to see, and Piquet, watching Piquet pass Alesi again. But I imagine we're going to see Nannini come into the pits this lap and to put on his dry weather slick tyres, because obviously the conditions now benefit those people who are going to run on slick tyres, and those on wets are in a losing position.
Well, there is Sandro Nannini. I wonder how long he's going to stay out there. When you're in the lead, it's very difficult to bring yourself to come in, isn't it?
Yes, it is, but I would have thought that tactically the team should have been advising him to come in. He's had his glory in leading the lap, and the Lazy now also coming in. It's like a stream of them boots, and it is, I think, maybe Manuel Pirro that was involved with Alboreto, but that looks like De Cesaris following in boots. And oh, it's Alan Prost in the Ferrari.
Senna back up to second place already. Senna 19 seconds behind Nannini. So this is a good one from Prost. Up through the 7 gears in that semi-automatic box. So currently Nannini, Senna, Mansell, Alesi, Berger. Prost moves up to 5th spot now.
That was a very good pit stop for Prost. He was in that quickly and he didn't waste time as he left his own pit box. And we're just seeing somebody trying to slide down the inside into the hairpin bend from the helicopter shot. We missed what happened.
Gerhard Berger, the fastest man actually on the racetrack at the moment, just put in a 1 minute 31.695.
I suspect Nannini has to come in this lap. Let's watch and see whether he is going to pay any heed to our advice. Berger and Senna, of course Berger's had that 1 minute penalty, but he ought to be getting out of the way of Ayrton Senna, let him get through and get on with the lead of the race.
Just trying to see if Gerhard's actually changed tyres, John. Looks as if he has.
It would appear so. I think if he was running at that speed, it's an indication that he would have been into the pits and put on those slick Goodyear tyres.
Nannini lapping in the 135s. Senna lapping in 133, and Berger now put in the fastest lap of the race to date, 1 minute 29.910. He's got that minute penalty to make up.
Well, he's also got an entire...
A fascinating struggle here on the Ile Notre Dame, the circuit. Gilles Villeneuve, Gerhard Berger, a man with a minute penalty. There's some of the wet weather tyres have just come off, gently steaming to themselves. And here's a replay. Not sure exactly what that was about, but here is the current leader, Sandro Nannini. The family riding on a high at the moment. His sister has got a record high in the Italian charts, the Italian World Cup song she's recorded.
So Nannini did go into the pits in that replay. We're just getting the benefit of a couple of minutes ago. Nannini, who was leading the race, going into the pits to change onto his slicks, and that of course places Senna back at the head of the field, with Alan Prost now running in second place behind him. Jean Alesi third, Boots in fourth. And that's a slow stop. It's a poor stop for Nannini. Lost 5 seconds over Alan Prost and Ayrton Senna in that pit stop, and those 5 seconds are very valuable ones to lose meaninglessly in the pits.
John, can there be any appeal against that decision of the stewards to penalise Gerhard a minute?
Once the stewards have made a decision, there is no right of appeal whatsoever. This is a regulation that was introduced for 1990. The stewards of a race meeting, once they make a decision, no team, driver, individual, whoever has got any right to appeal. Once that decision is there and it stands for that meeting, and if you are penalised a minute or fined a fortune in dollars, it's pay up and stay quiet.
Well, we're with Stefano Modena in the Brabham, team managed by Herbie Blash. And we're chasing the McLaren. The horsepower of that McLaren, John. This Brabham on the latest Judd engine, produced in Britain. Superb effort by Engine Developments. a relatively small budget compared to many of the other teams.
Yes, and Modena has now become a McLaren sandwich. He's got Berger in front and Senna behind him.
And another change at the top. Senna now leads Alain Prost. Prost up to second place, 22 seconds behind. Boots in third, Piquet fourth, then it's Mansell and Warwick up to sixth place. Presumably Derek, well, we have seen Derek make a pit stop. So they must have made a quick pit stop there, and Derek Warwick having a good run. No points so far this season for Derek. Senna, Prost, Buxton, Piquet, Mansell, Warwick, Patrese, Berger, Larini shown in 9th place now, and Donnelly in 10th spot. Now in replay, just see Modena being passed by. Senna was getting very out of shape in that manoeuvre.
Well, he had to go over the wet part of the track to get ahead of Modena, and on slick tyres that's not very comfortable to do. Had the car well out of shape, but gathered it up, and now is continuing on his way in the lead fairly comfortably.
Make the point, John, that if Berger had not been penalised a minute, he would now be leading this race by 3 seconds.
I have to say I disagree. I think the pits are informing Senna very clearly indeed that he does not have to race with Berger. If he did have to race with Berger, I can assure you the situation would not be quite as we are watching on the screen right now.
Okay, he's getting a little frustrated.
Well, of course, every second he has to stay behind Prost, he's losing more time to Ayrton Senna, and I think he feels that if he was able to get through, he could maybe make some inroads into Senna's lead, but getting stuck behind Alain Prost as he is, Senna's going to be allowed to.
Senna, Prost, Buxton, Piquet, Mansell, Warwick.
And this is a chance, this is a difficult moment for Prost. He's caught behind Alio, and Buxton's looking to take advantage. Oh, he's lost it,
and
he's,
lost
my
it.
goodness. Well, Alain Prost did something which is displays his experience, and that was he anticipated Buxton coming down the left-hand side, being on the wet, losing control as he did. He backed off the throttle, got on the brakes, and of course Buxton then slid into Alio's Ligier, and Alain Prost now continues in second place, unhurt and unhindered. In fact, it was Larini's Ligier we saw, not Alio's car. But watch again, Buxton saw the opportunity, took it, locked a brake, skidded past Prost, hit Larini's car. Buxton, I think, was trying to get back to the pits, but in the meantime, Prost used all his experience, read that situation very, very well indeed. Now that's maturity, that's what a good Grand Prix driver is all about.
Yes, well, no point at all, really, and Thierry getting back to the pits as John Lacey goes for a spin on the grass.
Yes, he's got his slick tyres well and truly on the wet. That's at the same spot. In fact, we just watched the incident with Buxton and Larini, so anybody who gets one wheel offline is going to be into the gravel trap or on the grass. And just look at the gravel flying out of the radiator ducts on that Tyrrell Ford. All that's going in front of race leader Ayrton Senna, and I'm sure he's not too happy to get a face full of gravel. That can do a lot of damage to his car. Potentially radiators can be punctured by those.
This is a frantic battle, but it's Senna well in the lead, 34 seconds ahead of Prost. Piquet's now third, Mansell up to fourth place, Derek Warwick is fifth, then it's Gerhard Berger actually shown in sixth spot, and indeed I think just wondering if Gerhard has worked his way up. Prost chucking the Ferrari into the hairpin.
Now we see Piquet very close indeed.
Well, confirmation that Berger is indeed sixth. So what a storming drive from him despite that problem. Modena in 10th, Cathy in 11th. Two Italians running together.
In third position is making no ground up at all on Alain Prost, whereas Mansell is certainly making gain on Nelson Piquet. So, over the line.
You're back live on Eurosport at an enthralling Canadian Grand Prix where Ayrton Senna leads. Prost is second, Piquet third, Mansell fourth. That's a good battle. Then Warwick and Berger, despite a minute penalty. We have seen Thierry Boutsen crash out of the action as he tries to attack second place. As we mentioned, they're out of the Canadian Grand Prix. So plenty of action here. Still this dry line, and there we have off a Benetton.
That is Nannini's car. We don't know what's happened, but obviously a major off at some point. He's trying to pass. You can see him coming down the inside, passing Jean Alesi, I would say, losing control. This is where Senna nearly went out of control as well. No grip whatsoever. Look at that, he's accelerating as the car hits the grass. It actually begins to accelerate. No grip and a mighty thump backwards into the tire wall. And that's at the point of the circuit where we saw Senna a few laps earlier also nearly having the same difficulties.
That is the big problem with the Canadian Grand Prix here. There is this dry line. If you get off the line, you can go for that wild ride, John.
Well,
got to be so careful.
That is, that's just the leader, Ayrton Senna. Again, for Senna, he's got to be so careful where he chooses to make his overtaking moves. The lazy, in fact, it is. There's a yellow flag now, so no one is allowed to pass. That stationary yellow flag means you are not allowed to pass, and you have to wait until a green flag is displayed after the incident before you can recommence your overtaking manoeuvres. But the lazy sliding past Martin Donnelly. Donnelly shut the door. Lazy looking to go down the inside.
Well, those two race together in the same team in Formula 3000. They know each other well, both ex-Eddie Jordan team members.
But look at this. Senna's trying to get through between the two of them.
Recap the positions: Senna, Prost, Piquet in third spot, Mansell, Berger, Warwick and Patrese.
And these conditions are really very tricky indeed, because the race line is not really wide enough to allow two cars to pass side by side, so you have to choose particularly carefully where you're going to do that. And it's taken Senna almost the best part of a lap to get past two cars, and he's got a further two cars ahead of him. Suzuki and De Cesaris, the too many will want to get clear of as quickly as possible. Gerhard Berger, whose car is just ahead, of course, is almost a lap down on the leader, Ayrton Senna, so he's no problem for Senna. But the Lolo Lamborghini and the Dallara Ford ahead of him are worrying.
Gerhard looks as if he's in trouble there. Gerhard Berger going through the picture. There's Senna, Alesi. Senna over 30 seconds ahead of the opposition. A masterly display from the man from Sao Paulo. And look at that, John.
That is hairy. That is hairy. Grillard and Eric Bernard. Grillard did shut the door pretty tight on Eric Bernard. Senna's gone through. Alesi sliding through the inside.
Alesi, familiar crash helmet colours. The colours of the late Elio De Angelis. Jean Alesi was a great fan of De Angelis, and when Elio was killed in that testing accident at Paul Ricard, he painted on his stripes as a tribute. Nice touch.
Yes, it is. Now we've got to see Senna. Can he get safely past De Cesaris? Berger's made it past.
23 cars still running. 22 cars now. After 26 laps, the order. Let's go through the field again. Senna, Prost, Piquet, Mansell, Berger, Warwick, Patrese, Alesi down in 8th place, but driving superbly. Donnelly, Modena, Caffey, Alio, Capelli, Wojtek, Bernard, Nakajima, Leto and De Cesaris. That's the top 18. Berger 55 seconds behind his teammate Ayrton Senna. When you add on the 1 minute penalty, 5 seconds ahead of him.
And Nigel Mansell's dropped back. Oh, again, look at that. Alesi's car has gone into... My goodness, that was a pretty awful accident, but John Alesi's quite all right. He did the very same thing, it would appear, that Nannini did a number of laps earlier. He came down, probably tried to pass somebody on the wet part of the track, has gone out of control and smashed into Nannini's Benetton, broken the Benetton in two. Alesi's Tyrrell is also damaged, but Alesi was able to climb out of the car totally unhurt. But let's watch it here, yes. Trying to pass to Cesaris, exactly a mirror of Nannini. See how the car swings one way, then the other, and the car, as soon as it hits the wet track, accelerates and slams into Nannini's already severely damaged Benetton. My goodness, that was a big shunt.
A very big shunt indeed for Jean Alesi, but he steps out uninjured as Ayrton Senna continues. After 27 laps, it's Senna, Prost, Piquet, Mansell, Berger and Patrese.
Well, we've seen just how treacherous the surface changes are, and Piquet, while not having seen the incidents, he will certainly see the results of them. And being as experienced as both these drivers are, they're not about to take unnecessary chances. Become a little drier, but of course the part of the track that's wet is not the part of the track that anybody's going to be on anyway, so that progress is going to have to take a little bit longer than maybe Piquet would like it to do, but patience is the name of the game at this stage in the race for him. When they come into traffic, that's the best opportunity he is going to have to try and get past Prost. The use of traffic will become a major part of the second half of this race, assuming that there's any traffic left to pass. If we see any more incidents like we've watched Nannini and Tejas, to drop back, think about it, look where your rivals are weak and basically work on where you're strong, try to combine those two elements and then take a shot. Now Mansell is closing again. We stand Stefano Modena, who will want to stay on the dry line. Prost sliding down the inside. The track there appears to be dry enough to do so. But Prost has got through. Piquet will be hindered because this part of the track they're coming onto is not quite as dry. And of course it's a one line through this very, very fast, sweeping right, left, right. No way to pass at that part of the track. Prost has stolen a little bit of advantage. He's opened up over a second in those few corners on Nelson Piquet. Modena looking in his mirrors, waiting for the opportunity to allow Piquet to slide through, but yeah, Piquet's gone through. And Andrew, I haven't seen Piquet race like this for a very long time. This is, I think, the best race he's provided for his fans, for the spectators, for TV in 3-4 years, since the days really of Mansell and Piquet at track. Mansell again dropping a little bit back from the tail of Piquet's Benetton. But the pressure that Piquet is applying to Prost is considerable indeed, and for Prost to remain totally unflustered is an indication of that man's abilities and skills. He's been pushed all the way by Nelson Piquet in his Benetton-Ford. Remember, the Ford has got a V8 engine, and it's not meant to be as powerful an engine as the V12 engine that Prost has in his Ferrari, but Ford, who are responsible for this engine, believe that in the next couple of races we're going to see even more horsepower being developed. And Piquet's passed Prost down the inside. The move we all expected has now been executed. Piquet has taken second place from Prost, and now it is Piquet second, Prost third, Nigel Mansell fourth. And I'm sure Mansell is going to be encouraged by that, because that is the one spot I would anticipate Mansell now echoing Piquet's move and trying to take that coveted third spot from his teammate Alain Prost.
Now they've got various back markers to lap. Piquet, the winner back in 1984, actually set the fastest lap for this race back in 1980. Well, a bit of Armco barrier in our picture for a second, and back to the action.
And we've got an Onyx and a Leighton House and an Osella, and of course Wojtek and the Onyx did not see Piquet, did not let him through. Piquet will not want to take a chance and go around the long way. He's going to have to wait until they get through this next little sequence before he can pass Gregor Wojtek, get onto the tail of Capelli, and then of Grillard in the Osella. Nervous moments for Piquet. He's passed Wojtek.
Wojtek in 11th spot at the moment.
And with that stationary yellow flag, Prost was not able to pass Wojtek, nor was Mansell. But of course, Mansell now has got a good chance to get a run at Alan Prost and take that third place from his teammate. I think he's going to do it. Let's have a look and see. Yes, there we go. Almost as if it was in the car myself. I did those in my day, didn't I, Andrew?
You certainly did, John. And of course, John Watson racing next weekend at Le Mans. Big news here. Driving for the Richard Lloyd Porsche team, not for Toyota. Paired with Bruno Giacomelli.
Oh dear me, Wojtek, my goodness. That was bad judgment on his part again. He ought to have been using his mirrors. Mansell not very happy about that. But now he's safely passed. Prost has got the problem. And he's going to have to wait until he gets around this second gear right-hand corner. Accelerating up third, fourth gear. And let's hope Wojtek is a little bit more aware that Alan Prost is on his tail. No, he's not. He hasn't let him through. Well, there's another man I'm sure Alan Prost is going to have a few words with after the race. Capelli inviting Mansell to take the inside line. Fortunately, that line is dry, so there was no problem.
Capelli and Wojtek are battling over 10th spot, in fact.
Well, indeed, they may well be, but when these lead cars come through, it is your requirement to get out of the way, let them through. Now, Prost, look at this, Wojtek passing under a yellow flag. That, I'm sure, is going to cause him to be black flagged. Capelli had to run wide. Prost didn't have very much option. He had to go up the inside. Prost is uncertain as to whether he should pass or not. Now he's made it through. Let's wait and see whether Gregor Wojtek is given the black card, the black flag. Probably a major fine. Swiss francs, French francs, whatever it is. That'll probably hurt his pocket.
Yes, the only man from Switzerland currently in Grand Prix racing from Zurich, Gregor Wojtek, former Formula 3000 racer.
Again behind a back marker this time, Gerhard in his Ocella. Prost, I think it's in this traffic, is illustrating that he's not quite as adroit as his two other competitors, Piquet and Mansell, and he tends to be a little bit more cautious, and in this case that caution I think has cost him not only second place but third place as well.
Now we see it in slow motion.
Yes, this is Piquet's pass on Prost 4 laps ago. Well judged and executed move on the part of Piquet, and good to see the Benetton really running competitively at the front of a grid.
Yes, still a very new car. We talked a lot about John Barnard, but this car, designed by Rory Byrne, South African designer, has been with the team, well, since the days when they were in fact Tolman.
But in fact, as you mentioned, Rory Byrne, who in my opinion is one of the most interesting, not necessarily in the specific design, but in the general overview of the car.
New fastest lap now, lap record to Piquet, 1 minute 23.131.
Yes, Mansell's execution on Alan Prost, and you can see Wojtek just ahead of Mansell. He slid in there very conveniently indeed. It wasn't much space for him to do it, but he got it in. Took the place from his teammate Prost, now running in third place. But of course, all that traffic has opened up a gap between Piquet and Mansell, and we have to wait now for the next few laps to see whether it's possible for Mansell to make any inroads into Nelson Piquet's almost 6-second lead now.
But the man I'm watching is Gerhard Berger. Berger chasing now after Alan Prost, closing up on him. I think Prost has got a problem, or just the way the race was working out?
I think he may have a problem, of course. We'll not know that until after the race. But it's, I think, basically the traffic situation. He wasn't able to use the traffic to its best advantage when it really counted. In the earlier part of the race, he had the advantage. But when it came down to a bit of street fighting, which is what that was about, and there we see one of the Delaras, Andrea de Cesaris' car, stopped. Looks like he's just pulled off. There's no signs of skid marks on the track, so I suspect that some form of mechanical failure has taken his race from him. But talking about Prost, he's not really the street fighter that Mansell is. Mansell, I believe, is one of the finest drivers, especially in a racing situation. We saw last year in Hungary an absolutely superb race, and he took the race from Senna.
Just a shot of Monitor there. He's in 8th spot at the moment, behind Warwick and Donnelly.
But our leader, Senna, very much in control. He's in contact all the time with the pits, with Ron Dennis, masterminding the strategy of this race. We saw in Monte Carlo 2 weeks ago, Senna appearing to be in trouble. Well, he may have had a problem, but the man's ability to assess the situation, even if it was only half a second of a victory over a Lacey, he knew exactly what was going on, as he does today here in Canada on the Gilles Villeneuve circuit.
Any memories of Villeneuve, John? Raced against him?
Yes, I have. I've got memories, in fact, of one race away in '79 in practice, and Gilles, of course, was a truly outstanding competitor and a master in these type of conditions, wet, half wet, dry. And in Dijon '79 in practice, I managed to drive around the outside of him in the wet on one of those very fast sweeping corners, and afterwards he came up to me and said he couldn't believe it. I couldn't take the credit for it because I had a super race time.
Virgil in Austria. .32 seconds, the gap between Senna and Piquet. Brazilian 1-2 at the moment.
At this stage of the race now, Senna really can afford to be cautious. He's got Nakajima ahead of him, but there's no need to take any unnecessary risks. He'll just wait until he comes onto this next straight part of the track, use the 50 to 60 horsepower advantage his Honda engine has over the V8 Ford engine of Nakajima, pulls out, passes without any effort whatsoever. No risks. Now we're into a percentage motor race from Ayrton Senna.
Piquet, and it's Mansell, Prost and Berger. Now just 3 seconds between Prost and Berger. So the motor race continues. Senna may be leading, but battles behind. Stay with it. We'll be back in just a few moments.
Sono dei tempi notevoli questi, insomma. Del resto questa è una pista che più giri e più veloce vai, perché si deposita più gomma, dunque il grip, diciamo l'aderenza aumenta in maniera consistente. Linea Termiani.
Abbiamo Nannini, abbiamo rincorso dappertutto, questo qui è entrato dalla parte retrostante, non si è fatto via da nessuno, nessuna televisione l'ha beccata. Allora perché si è nascosto, è arrivato con calma? No, sono arrivato con calma, ho messo un fondo al circuito e ci ho messo 10 minuti ad arrivare. Ecco, cos'è successo? Non ci posso credere, guarda. Cos'è successo? Guarda, è da barzelletta perché 2 giorni fa mi ha tenuto una marmotta e dico, ma guarda queste marmotte che girano per la strada, se uno mentre guida in corsa magari la prende, ecco, l'ho presa proprio io la marmotta. Ma hai preso magari la stessa che aveva passato nelle prove? Non lo so, nelle prove, nelle prove con la macchina normale. Con la macchina normale, mi sono fermato e l'ho fatto passare.
Before the season began, falling off a push bike, and he an exercise bike. When I say a push bike, I mean he was pushing him jolly hard, but it was stationary, and he failed to start, and then that was in Phoenix, but he finished in 5th position at Monaco, and he's running strong now, so if he can just keep going, that'll be good. And Arrow's leader, Philip, you're watching Stefano Molina, number 8 in 8th position now. It's Senna you're looking at. And the Arrows team have had a boost this week because Alan Jenkins has joined them.
You're back. This man still leads. Ayrton Senna, Nelson Piquet second, Mansell still third, Prost still fourth. Then Gerhard Berger, currently in 5th place, followed by Derek Warwick. That's the top 6. Senna, Piquet, Mansell, Prost, Berger and Warwick. Senna maintaining his lead of approximately 30 seconds over Nelson Piquet, but Mansell closing on Piquet. John?
Yes, indeed he is. He's been closing probably close to a second a lap, and we just saw Mansell. There we see him again. Now he's very much got Nelson Piquet in his sights, and of course nothing feels better for a race driver than to physically see that you're catching the guy ahead of you.
Still the odd little damp patch on the circuit. The clouds have rolled back here at Montreal. Most unlikely to have any more rain. This race with just 12 laps left to run.
Alain Prost really sort of detached himself from that battle for second place. Whether he has got a problem with his Ferrari pointing at anything, whatever the problem may be, I'm sure his pits are well aware because of these in-car radios that all the cars have. They communicate the drivers in the pit.
Quite a few of the drivers, John, coming back to Britain for testing in between this race and Mexico in 2 weeks' time.
Yes, one of those men is going to be Gerhard Berger. Others, I think, like Nigel Mansell, are having a slightly more leisurely layoff between the two Grand Prix. He's going down to some friends, I think, in Houston or somewhere in that part of America, of any city in the world.
There's a superb shot. You see how this island is, two islands together. The Ile Sainte Helene is the other one you just see in the corner of your picture. And a fan there waving a white handkerchief. Oh no, it's a white flag.
Well, that indicates that there's a car travelling slowly somewhere ahead of those two cars, yes. Looks like poor Martin Donnelly's day is over. His Lotus is cruising back to the pits. So, an early bath for Martin tonight.
It looks as if there's just a wisp of smoke coming out of the back of the engine. May have been mistaken.
Well, there's not a little bit of flame, in fact, coming out from the left-hand side, so something inside the Lamborghini V12 engine has done a mischief, and that's going to be the cause of Martin Donnelly's retirement for today.
Just to update you on that battle between Prost and Berger, it's now 6 seconds. Senna, Piquet, Mansell, Prost, Berger, Warwick, Modena up to 7th place, and Caffey is now in 8th. Ayrton Senna was in a chatty mood yesterday. John and I caught up with him in the back of the McLaren pit, and a super interview which we'll be bringing you next couple of weeks' time. But there is Martin Donnelly.
Well, they've got the fresh set of tyres all prepared for him, but I think Martin might be saying it's more than tyres I need today. You build another V12 Lambo engine in for me in a couple of seconds, then get back out again. I don't think that's going to be possible.
Well, in car with Stefano Modena, flashing past the pits.
It looks like he's behind Nakajima, Tyrrell. And one of the things I watch about Modena's driving is that he tends to nod his head in. Look at the way he puts his head right over, and is one of those that really bends his head into the corner as he slides down the inside of Nakajima. Probably Saturo might have been dozing a little bit there, wasn't quite with the program, but realized in time that Modena was coming through and conceded the corner.
Well, that pink writing you'll be familiar with, John. That's the Japanese Italia company who is sponsoring your Porsche at Le Mans next week.
Oh, so I believe. I don't know what it all means, but I don't know if it means I've got to wear one of those pink anoraks as well.
No, I think you need to be paid extra for that. You're looking forward to more?
Yes, I think it's going to be very interesting indeed. I'm driving in a brand new 962 Porsche, and with Goodyear tyres, and I think that's going to be a very, very competitive package. It's a totally different race this year. They've got 2 chicanes on the straight for the first time, so really a lottery at Le Mans, I think, for the first time in quite a long time.
Senna goes on to his last lap.
And really he's just cruising at this stage in the race. He's dropped his lap time from 1:23 to 1:28, and we saw Senna do this in Monte Carlo when he was concerned about his engine and the engine note, but at this stage in the race he's decided that he's won the race. All he has to do now is virtually coast home, and whether he wins by the 15-second gap that was at the start of the last lap or 1 second doesn't matter to him. It's the 9 points that he's after.
Yes, just led briefly in the tyre changing situation by Nannini, but Senna has totally dominated this race. Wonderful combination of that excellent McLaren Cassie. The man with the flag's having a bit of a practice.
I don't know what he's doing. I've never seen a man wave the flag 15 or 20 seconds before the leader comes round to take it. Maybe he was just practicing, or maybe he was slightly confused. I don't know what he's holding it out for, because
I think that's something. Oh, now he's giving it the real thing. Just wanted something to do with Gerhard Berger, of course, on the road, won the motor race.
Well,
but had that.
I'd like to think he was a little bit more aware of what was going on than that. But there is the winner, Ayrton Senna. And what a masterful victory that was. Really, I mean, I think we're about to see this season the beginnings of what you would describe as being the purple patch of Ayrton Senna's career.
There is Gerhard Berger on his very last lap. Was his fastest and a new record. Championship points. Senna has 31 points for Senna. Berger 18, Alesi 13. Prost now up to third place with 15. Piquet up to 12. We'll take you through those again in a moment.
I just hope that Gerhard Berger doesn't drive into the pit lane here, because I think the flag marshal has made a mistake in flagging the wrong car. And technically speaking, Berger hasn't finished the race, and I have a funny feeling that he was about to drive into the pit lane.
Well, John, I have to disagree with you. He has finished the race, and he had a minute penalty added to his time. I think that's the way they do it. We'll find out later. But really, no confusion. Senna is the winner. He's really delighted with that one.
Absolutely, indeed.
His 99th Grand Prix, Ayrton Senna. His 23rd victory. So, the rest of the cars coming home. The order, we think: Senna, Piquet, Mansell, Berger, Prost. Warwick gets that point for Lotus this time. Modena, Caffey, Bernard, Capelli, Nakajima. So Senna the winner. Slowed right down at the end. In fact, the victory margin just 10.5 seconds. Well, John, we saw Jean Alesi have a very big accident. Everyone's been predicting that Alesi would finally shunt in a Formula 1 car, and it really was a problem of a novice. Ron Dennis talking to Gerhard Berger. Plenty of Brazilian flags here, presumably connected to Brazilian fans.
Yeah, talking about Alesi's accident, really that was a lot of enthusiasm, a lack of judgment, and a little bit of inexperience in his part to try and do what he did there. Really was impossible. It was never going to work. Even when Nannini did it, he shouldn't have tried to do it. Senna did do it, but much further down the track, and he was able to get it under control and back onto the dry line before he was heavily on the brakes. But I think for Jean Alesi that'll be a very memorable lesson. And as you say, many people have been anticipating this confidence, almost overconfidence that he's been displaying in a car. It may now check that, and no bad thing.
Look at Senna. He is absolutely delighted with that success.
And he's entitled to be. That was an absolute copybook victory. He drove the perfect, that's the definitive Grand Prix victory. And as I said earlier, the purple patch that Senna might, well, in my opinion, be now coming into, the maturity that sometimes has been seen to be lacking, impetuosity when he's been overtaking people, particularly slower people, misjudgments that one would not assume that he would make. Maybe now we're now in the period of Ayrton Senna's Formula 1 career, we're going to see something even more remarkable.
Senna, Piquet, Mansell, Berger, Prost and Donnelly, that is the top six. Warwick, I should have said, in sixth place. Well, a fan congratulating Ayrton. Talking to his mechanics and engineers. The Mexican Grand Prix, the next race in 2 weeks' time. We'll be live, flag to flag, on Eurosport. John and myself. There's Modena, Caffey, Bernard, Capelli, Nakajima and Suzuki. So it's goodbye from John and myself.
Bernard. En 9e, 10e, Capelli, 11e, Nakajima.
Partida de Berger está ali do lado esquerdo. Já partiu, sim, ele já partiu, mas quer dizer, bem, que ele parte antes dos outros, parte antes do verde, isso é verdade. Mas quer dizer, isto é um pormenor, não é? Ao pé da partida de Imola, em que saíram todos antes do verde acender. Isto é um pormenor e, aliás, eu suponho que as autoridades esportivas, entendidas na matéria como são, deveriam dar o desconto adequado, já que se trata de piso molhado, como ele gosta. Ele que tem uma certa tendência pela perfeição, tem como objetivo realmente fazer sempre o melhor, conseguiu aqui um grande prémio, aquilo que ele chama um grande prémio à sua maneira. Nos treinos foi o mais rápido, na prova ganhou. Sorriso naturalmente merecido. Ouviram do Ipiranga, letra do Grande Prémio do Brasil, pódium de Montreal, agora o champanhe da Prix. Agitam-se bandeiras, curiosamente, dos três primeiros. Ali uma bandeira da Ferrari, depois a de Inglaterra, Nigel, Mansell, e a do Brasil, Ayrton Senna e Nelson Piquet. Champanhe da Prix e...
He is an absolute amazing driver. I mean, not since the days, I guess now, we could say of Jimmy Clark and Jackie Stewart has somebody been so dominant.
Well, I think it's fairly safe to say that he is already a legend. I mean, he will go down as being in the same breath as Fangio, Clark and the great drivers, that's for sure. Good drive from Piquet.
Very good drive from Piquet, and...
Whoops, careful, Nigel, you might get a whiplash of the wrist there or something, throwing that head.
The captain throwing around there in your chain flying, and Alan has got this thing about Nigel and his whiplash. If he jerks the head round, we get a little whiplash. Is that what it is?
Well, it just seems that every time he goes over a curb as a shunt, he's got whiplash or something.
OK, now we're going to recap the placings because I think we've got to get Alan to go through this. It was a lot closer race than we really thought at the time.
Well, it certainly was. I mean, you know, obviously Senna won it and Piquet second, Mansell third, but Gerhard Berger was only 4 seconds from coming second, and that's after he received a minute penalty for jumping that start. So, unbelievable drive from Berger, and it's probably one of those situations where no one will really give him the credit that's due because he didn't win the race, but a great drive. Alain Prost in 5th place, and he was 15 seconds behind, and Derek Warwick bringing in a championship point for Lotus, which was a good result for them. All right, now that means that the Drivers' Championship has Senna increasing his lead with 31 points over his teammate Berger with 19. Alain Prost is now 3rd place from Alesi, and Nelson Piquet is in 5th, and Riccardo Patrese and Terry Boutsen still equal 6th there with 9 points each. McLaren-Honda romping away into the distance with 50 points over Ferrari 21, Williams-Renault 18, 4th place Benetton-Ford 16, 5th place Tyrrell Cosworth 14, and the Brabham Judd and the Arrows Cosworth equal 6 with 2 points each.
Well, a most interesting race really. We had wet conditions, dry conditions, the tactics of tyre changes, obviously what James said made a lot of sense at Berger winning early, and that obviously worked to his credit toward the end of the race.
Yeah, I must say I was confused why they were staying out so long on wets, but particularly Senna seemed to stay out a hell of a long time, but Berger got in there, got them over and done with, and was certainly the quickest man on the track there for a number of laps, and you know, a great race, as I said before, to finish only 5 seconds from 2nd place. Great.
Okay, well,
So congratulations to Ayrton Senna on another brilliant victory. Let's see how that leaves the Drivers' Championship table. And it extends Mr. Senna's lead to some 12 points from his teammate Gerhard Berger. 3rd, Alain Prost for Ferrari. 4th, John Alesi for Tyrrell. 5th, Nelson Piquet in the Benetton. 6th, the Williams drivers, Boutsen and Patrese. In the Constructors' Championship, McLaren already a healthy lead after just 5 rounds, ahead of Ferrari, 2nd, 3rd of Williams, 4th Benetton, 5th Tyrrell, 6th Arrows and Brabham.
I think it was difficult for everybody because conditions were quite difficult to judge, slippery, dirty circuit, difficult overtaking maneuvers because as soon as you go offline you would have a big problem with grip and with the tires. But I got 9 points and I'm very happy for that.
What does it mean to you, this kind of victory here in Montreal with the number 27?
Well, it means 9 more points in the championship, which is very important. And as I mentioned in one of my previous press conference, I hope for the first time the number 27 can have the award title It's a long way to go. It's going to be tough, but the possibility is there, and we have to work hard and concentrate and try it.
Nelson Piquet, please. How was the circuit today? Not too bad or very bad?
Well, the condition was very bad because it was very wet and dry, and that make the race very difficult. But the game is the same for everybody.
Are you happy with this second place today?
Well, yeah, more than a year I was not on the podium. Yeah, it's very good for me.
Nigel, how do you feel about your third place today? A very good race for you?
Well, a little bit, but we had a compromise, but I had big oversteer, and one of the biggest problems I had was coming out the hairpin. The automatic box was missing one gear every other lap, and you lose that just coming onto the straight, and before you know, you've lost about 50 yards.
So plenty of incident in the Canadian Grand Prix. Let's now check on the stories the fifth round of the Formula One World Championship left in its wake. Obviously the biggest incident coming right at the start, involving McLaren's number 2 driver. Gerhard Berger docked a minute for jumping the start, denying him any chance of victory. The Austrian definitely moving when the red light was on, and afterwards McLaren had no complaints at the steward's decision. In the Williams pit, brake trouble put paid to Riccardo Patrese' chances. These exclusive Eurosport pictures actually show flames coming from the discs, an illustration of just how hard on brakes the Gilles Villeneuve circuit is. Meanwhile, Patrese's Williams teammate Thierry Boutsen crashed out, taking with him the Ligier of Nicola Larini. All in all, a disappointing weekend for Williams and their Canadian sponsors. Over at Benetton and out of sight of the Canadian TV cameras, Alessandro Nannini made a second pit stop. The reason? He'd hit a beaver and came in for a replacement nose cone. Meanwhile, Nannini's chassis survived his spectacular crash, but as these pictures show, it was almost cut in two after being hit by the Tyrrell of Jean Alesi, and that's one chassis that certainly isn't repairable. Alesi's car fared much better. Reports from Tyrrell suggest that they can salvage something. Only time will tell what effect the crash will have, if any, on the driving style of the young Frenchman. Finally, Martin Donnelly in the Lotus was running well in 7th place, just behind teammate Derek Warwick, but 10 laps from the end, the Ulsterman was forced to retire with a blown engine. So that just about wraps up an incident-packed Canadian Grand Prix, one that may well be remembered for the reawakening of Nelson Piquet's championship challenge. The cars stay across the Atlantic for round 6 of the World Championship, the Mexican Grand Prix in Mexico City a week on Sunday. It's Ayrton Senna's 100th race. Find out if he can make it its 23rd win here on Eurosport. So congratulations to Ayrton Senna on an almost faultless drive. From me, Matthew Lorenzo, and all the Eurosport team, it's goodbye for now. See you in 2 weeks' time.
I think conditions were difficult for everybody. Slippery with the wets, and then with the slicks, still with the circuit quite slippery, very difficult to judge your pace, your braking points. Of course, to overtake slow cars, as soon as you go a little bit offline, the tires would just lose completely the grip. I had a first gear broken on my pit stop, so from there on, from quite early in the race on, I had no first gear. And I was very concerned more than anything that this first gear would compromise the gearbox later in the race, the other gears, but fortunately the car went to the finish line altogether.
The trouble was, as soon as you go offline to overtake, it can take maybe one lap or even a lap and a half before you get good grip back. And a few drivers were very good, they moved offline, but a few other drivers, they just stayed right on the line and forced you offline, and it spoilt the race at the end a little bit.
Ayrton Senna's 23rd Grand Prix victory here in Canada, with Nelson Piquet in 2nd place, Nigel Mansell 3rd and Gerhard Berger 4th, in spite of that 60-second penalty at the start. 0.03 of a second ahead of Alain Prost in 5th position, with Derek Warwick in 6th place. And in the Drivers' Championship, Ayrton Senna is now 12 points ahead of Gerhard Berger, with Alain Prost in 3rd place, Jean Alesi 4th, Nelson Piquet in 5th position, and a tie for 6th between Riccardo Patrese and Thierry Boutsen. McLaren now lead the Constructors' Championship by 29 points, but it's a new 2nd place constructor, Ferrari, who have moved ahead of Williams, with Benetton in 4th place and Tyrrell 5th. And in